I was involved in a project called The Second Coming, and I got much more than I bargained for. It's been a week since the program started. A program that I thought would be the easiest way to make 50 grand within a week. But things turned to shit on the third day of a project called The Second Coming. 18 people were involved in the project. 8 of us were observers. I was one of the observers. And our role was simple. We all gathered together in one room, and we would watch the dozens of TV screens that displayed everything going on in the little makeshift town. If there was anything noteworthy going on, we would all write down a little note about it. At the end of the day, we would all read our notes out loud. It's funny how different our perspective of every event was. 9 of the people were placed in the town as residents. Their role was simple as well. All they had to do was live like they normally do. Food, water, shelter, and entertainment was provided. The first couple of days, I was jealous of them. Being an observer was really boring most of the time. Last, but certainly not least, we had our Jesus. His role was not simple. He was the only one that had a direct line of communication with the people that ran the project, and they would let him know when it was time for him to create another miracle. The guy they picked to take on the Jesus role was a wiry little guy. A bit shorter than average, with a body structure that matched his single chopstick. He had a squeaky voice and always looked to be dirty, even after taking a shower. His name was Chad, and he was far from impressive looking. The residents did not know about the Jesus part of the project. Shit, they were even given a completely different name for the project. For all they knew, it was a sleep study or whatever. Like I said, the first 3 days went completely fine. The residents got to know each other, and that night, a couple of the residents paired up and went to sleep. It doesn't take a genius to know what they were doing. The second and third day was so boring that I found myself dozing off half of the day, along with all the other observers. The fourth day started off normally, but around 3 in the afternoon, Chad performed his first miracle. It wasn't really anything marvelous, just a simple trick that shouldn't have worked with a bunch of adults on the first try. But I guess the people chosen to be residents weren't the sharpest group of people. They were all eating lunch when a woman started waving her arms frantically. Chad was face down in the middle of the swimming pool. When all the other residents ran up to the pool, Chad started to stand up and walked over on the water towards the other residents. A couple of them fell on their knees, while the others just stood in shock. I don't really know how to describe out the events of the 4 days any differently than how I recorded it on my notes, so I'll just post my notes on here. Day 4. Chad was talking with a man. Everything seemed fine, but the guy just collapsed in front of Chad. It didn't take long for the other residents to run up to them. Chad stared down at the ground for a couple of seconds before kneeling down and touching the man on the forehead. Almost immediately, the guy jumped to his feet and looked completely fine. Honestly, I don't know how they did it. This is definitely a lot harder of a trick than the one he did the previous day. Day 5. A woman was standing on top of a building. None of us noticed her even get up there. We just saw her launch herself off the building, and the blood slowly surround her lifeless body as Chad and the other residents slowly walked up to the gory scene. Chad knelt down next to her and whispered a couple of words into her ear. She opened her eyes, and with a dazed look on her face, sat up and looked around at the other residents. We were all shocked. Even the other observers have no idea how he could possibly have done it. Day 6. All of the residents gathered together early in the morning. They were all talking, and Chad was nowhere to be seen. They all looked to be scared. When Chad finally showed up, a couple of the residents grabbed him, while the rest tied him up to where he couldn't move. They all took turns kicking, punching, stabbing, and spitting at him for what seemed like half the day. It took a while for Chad to die, but he didn't struggle. Instead, he had a knowing smile on his face. They buried his body later in the evening. Day 7. As soon as we turned on the screen, all of us were completely pale with shock. It looked like a massacre. Body parts were thrown around the entire town. Blood was smeared on almost every building. And on the middle screen, with the same knowing smile on his face, was Chad. He was mouthing the same phrase over and over again. "I'll be back for you." End journal. He vanished into thin air, and before any of us could react, the room became pitch black. I don't know when I lost consciousness, but I woke up in my bedroom this morning. I checked my bank account and saw the money was deposited into it. My room was the same as how I left it a week ago, except for a note on my mirror, and a small bouquet of white roses at the edge of my bed. Don't worry, I'll give you a couple of days to run as far as you can. With love, Chad. This is Kinetic Symphony. If you've enjoyed this narrated story, please subscribe and like the video to help me grow. Thank you.